In a landmark 2025 ruling, the Supreme Court of India set a crucial boundary that will have a lasting impact on the country's criminal justice system. This decision is seen as a major step forward in safeguarding the rights of those who seek justice through the appellate process. The court held that high courts cannot increase a convict sentence or convict them of a more serious crime when only the convict has appealed. This means that if a person challenges their conviction or sentence, the court cannot use that opportunity to impose a harsher penalty or add new charges. This ensures that seeking an appeal won't backfire, protecting the right to challenge convictions without fear of harsher punishment. It encourages people to exercise their right to appeal, knowing that the process is designed to be fair and not punitive. The judgment clarifies that unless the state or victim formally appeals, the High Court cannot act on its own to worsen the appellant's position. This brings much-needed clarity and reassurance to those navigating the legal system. This decision upholds fairness, making the appellate process a true avenue for redress, not a potential trap. It strengthens the principle that justice should be accessible and not come with hidden risks for those seeking to correct a wrong. For those considering an appeal, this ruling guarantees that the legal battle will be limited to the grounds they raise, unless the prosecution or the victim formally seeks more. Ultimately, it reinforces trust in the legal system and encourages people to pursue justice without hesitation. The Supreme Court's principles emerged from Nagarajan's case in Tamil Nadu, stemming from a 2003 incident. Nagarajan was acquitted of abetment of suicide but convicted for outraging modesty and trespass, receiving a 3-year sentence. Dissatisfied, he alone appealed to the Madras High Court, seeking acquittal or a reduced sentence. Notably, neither the state nor the victim's family filed any appeal for a harsher sentence or to challenge his acquittal. Nagarajan's appeal was strictly defensive. He wasn't inviting the court to revisit the more serious charge. The High Court, however, took an unexpected turn, expanding the scope of the case on its own. This move set the stage for a major legal controversy. During Nagarajan's appeal, the Madras High Court took an extraordinary step by invoking its Suo Motu revisional powers that allow the court to act on its own initiative, even when no party has requested intervention. The court decided to revisit Nagarajan's acquittal for abetment of suicide, despite the fact that the prosecution had not filed any appeal or challenged the earlier verdict. In a surprising turn, the High Court overturned his acquittal, found him guilty of a more serious offense, and increased his sentence to 5 years in prison, far beyond what Nagarajan had anticipated when he appealed. Nagarajan, who had approached the court seeking relief and justice, suddenly found himself facing a much harsher penalty simply for exercising his right to appeal. This action by the High Court blurred the traditional lines between an appeal and a revision, raising a critical legal question. Can a High Court use its revisional powers to the detriment of an appellant, especially when the appeal was filed only by the accused and not the prosecution? Many observers saw the High Court's move as effectively punishing Nagarajan for seeking judicial review, casting doubt on the fairness of the process and the security of the right to appeal. This unprecedented and controversial step forced Nagarajan to take his case to the Supreme Court, hoping for a remedy and clarity on the law. The core issue now stood before the highest court. Should an appeal for relief ever result in a worse outcome for the appellant, or does this undermine the very purpose of the right to appeal? To understand the Supreme Court's ruling, it's vital to distinguish between an appeal and a revision. An appeal is a challenge by a party seeking relief, limited to the issues they raise. Revisional powers, especially Suo Motu, let courts review cases on their own to correct grave errors, but only under specific circumstances. Suo Motu revision is meant to address clear miscarriages of justice, not to expand the scope of an accused's appeal. In Nagarajan's case, the High Court conflated these powers, using Suo Motu revision to increase his punishment during his own appeal. The Supreme Court had to decide if this blending of powers was legally permissible. The Supreme Court decisively ruled that a High Court cannot use its Suo Motu revisional powers to enhance a sentence. nor can it convict an accused of a more serious offense, when the appeal before it has been filed solely by the accused. This means that if an accused person challenges their conviction or sentence, the court cannot, on its own, impose a harsher punishment or convict them of a graver charge than what was originally decided. The principle of no reformatio in peius, which means not worsening an appellant's position, was strongly reaffirmed by the Supreme Court in this judgment. This doctrine is a cornerstone of criminal appellate law, ensuring that the right to appeal is meaningful and not just a formality. The right to appeal must not be chilled by the fear of receiving a harsher punishment simply for seeking justice or review. If the prosecution believes a tougher sentence is warranted or wishes to challenge an acquittal, it must take the proper legal route and file a separate appeal. Only then can the court consider increasing the sentence or overturning an acquittal, and even in such cases, due process must be strictly followed. The accused must always be given clear notice of the prosecution's appeal and a fair opportunity to respond to the new allegations or demands. The Madras High Court's approach, which bypassed these essential safeguards, was found to violate the fundamental requirements of procedural fairness and justice. By restoring these boundaries, the Supreme Court clarified that appellate courts can uphold, acquit, order a retrial, or reduce a sentence, but cannot unilaterally increase punishment in an appeal filed only by the accused, thus protecting the integrity of the appellate process. The Supreme Court set aside the High Court's enhanced conviction and sentence, restoring the original trial court decision. This ruling protects all appellants, ensuring appeals remain a safe avenue for justice, not a risk for harsher outcomes. The judgment strengthens due process, making the legal system more predictable and fair. High courts are reminded that their powers must be exercised within legal limits, not at the expense of the accused's rights. The prosecution must follow proper channels for harsher penalties. Courts cannot do this on their own during a convict's appeal. The Nagarajan ruling stands as a vital safeguard, ensuring procedural fairness and upholding the right to appeal for all.